them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Start your Monday night off right with the World GT Championship here on iRacing with us at RaceSpotTV. It is all about the start of the season as we move into the 5th and 6th round of the championship, and critically, as it all gets kicked off, it's about finding form if you didn't manage to do so already. Welcome to one of the most iconic places in all of motorsport, and the correct way of saying it is welcome home, ladies and gentlemen, to the home of racing. My name's Jake Sperry here, bringing you all of the coverage with Jeremy Scott along with me for the ride here today. And Jeremy, Silverstone comes along as one of those tracks that you sit it down on the calendar and immediately, anytime you race here, any variation, the word marquee comes to mind.
It really does. And, you know, here's what's cool about it is it really separates the men from the boys in most series. Now, the past couple weekends, we've seen two drivers really up at the front, James Boomey and Alexander Davidson. It's been a battle between Altitude Freedom Esports and WSR Esports and Pro-Am and Am. It's been a little bit of a toss-up, so I'm excited to see what today's races have to offer for us.
So am I, and there's a look here. It's the feature that we have here today in terms of our schedule, not necessarily a technical run that we have going out there, but you've got the likes there as you go down Algarve, Road America, Indianapolis. Road America, of course, being that endurance round of the calendar, and you will see those three types of race that come up over the course of the season, Jeremy, that is so important to get every single facet correct.
And we've already seen how the feature races have worked with Fuji last time out. Now, as we know, with the in-between races, we end up jumbling up the field in some way, shape, or form. Will we see the full jumble like we saw at Fuji, or will we see 20 like we saw this past weekend over at the Bend in Australia? Remains to be seen. Either way, we do know that the starts are really critical for some drivers to make it all the way through the end.
Yeah, so that will be something really critical to see. There are your pro standings out there. Top of the table, it's a tale of two. James Boomey for Altitude Frame Esports and Alexander Davidson for WSR Esports, who are there as 1 and 2. Ross McFarlane is giving the biggest chase in third, with Marley Joffe in 4th position. Then it's a bit of a gap back to Harrison Crowther and Joey Petrick, who are 5th and 6th. 6 points back of that is Michael Ev Docker, with Arthur Thurtle and Anders Meyer making up 8th and 9th. Adam Watson will round out the top 10 in category. Pro-Am, though, Jeremy, again, a very close affair.
It really is, and what's interesting here, take a look at who's in second place. That is last year's AM champion, Aiden Carter. They had a great race last time out at the Bend, and they're within striking distance of William Guthrie, who has a couple of wins to his credit. Andy Archer sitting in third. Michael Gray, who's also a race winner so far this year, in 4th in that Full Tilt Motorsport team. Hycon ID Lidmo, Phil Samways in your top 6. Eric Mushka, in spite of a win, sitting in 7th. Tom Griffiths, Dickie Simnor, and Tommy Vidal rounding out your top 10 in the Pro-Am standings. The Am, that's a lot less tight, Jake, is the top 10 looking pretty decent so far.
They are, but it is Daniel McCauley who's got a 7-point lead over Ben Altria there in 2nd position. Franek Sikorsky at 16 points back, still very much in the mix with Jesse Payne-Wilkins and Brian Loynes. Then for Altitude Frame Esports, Mr. Hedge. Joe Coffin is in 6th position with Jacques Eva in 7th. Benjamin Gregory will be in 8th with Paul Smith, a good friend of ours, then from Cracked Racing, and Adam Hedgecock making up the top 10 as they go. The team standings then for Pro are in play. 9 on the board, but WSR Esports, Jeremy, have complete control.
They really do. And of course, you take a look at the roster of WSR Esports for Pro Team. You got Davidson, McFarlane, and Avdaka. They've been all at the front the past couple of weekends, so no surprise they hold a 137-point lead over Altitude Frame Esports, where their anchor there, James Boomey's been leading those points. That's Effect Simulations, Altitude, and Racing Labs rounding out your top 5. You take a look at the AM standings, and a little bit tighter there for 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, Full Tilt v Motorsport, though, in Control Series, 1 in 2nd with Full Tilt in 3rd. Then Altitude Frame, Mr. Hedge in 4th position with Boosted Motorsports, Project 91 Academy Team, and Effect Simulations Club Sports making up the 7 then in category. But as it goes, qualifying has already been and gone. James Boomey and Ross McFarlane will be on the front with Alexander Davidson and Marley Joffe on row 2. Anders Meyer and Dennis Grabowski will line up row 3 as Harrison Crowther and Michael Evdoka are 7th and 8th. Tom Griggs and Matthias Pirhanen make up the top 10 as Adam Watson and Joey Petrick are 11th and 12th places. It then follows with Adam Tompkins and Arthur Thurtle, with Eric Mushka, the first of the Pro-Ams, then in 15th as Michael Gray and Brian Loynes. Great qualifying there from Am category in 17th. Aiden Carter goes from 18th place. William Guthrie and Jack Osborne are on row 10 as Tom Griffiths and Daniel McCauley will share a Series 1 row 11. Ben Altria and Tommy Vedel will be on row 12 as Franek Sikorsky and Jesse Payne-Wilkins are on row 13. Chris Chatterton for Nomad and Alistair Kirk are 27th and 28th, with Richard Sinmore and Elliot Roberts making up the top 30. Jonathan Walker and Phil Samways have Josh Boot and Joe Coffin behind them, with Håkan Ida Lindmo in 35th and Taylor Lane in 36th. It's a 51-car field, so the rest of the teams will be cycling on through the likes of Benjamin Gregory down there in 41st position, with the Quartermass Motorsports car of Ben Bennyworth there. The likes of Paul Smith down in 45th position alongside John Roberts. The two know each other very well. Colin Sansom is 48th. And the last 3 cars that didn't set a time, Andy Archer by penalty, Patrick Falconer and Howard Hassan making things go through. But we're already rounding ourselves then through the final corner and the launch very early by James Boomy. Green flag in the air for race 5 of the championship. 45 minutes on the clock, and got the clearance very quickly ahead of Ross McFarlane, as Alexander Davidson will have to sit in 3rd position as they run through the village now into turn number 3, and it's all about holding this momentum through the loop in towards turn 4, and a nice clean start here from the front of the field.
And of course, we see Jaffe to the outside of Meyer. Interesting start to see that the top 3 or 4 kind of taking it easy. We haven't seen that the past couple of weekends, as everybody kind of taking heed of some of the discussion, Jake, over the past week was the difficulty in the start. And I know that the start is actually at the FIA finish line, and there were some drivers saying, well, yeah, we just got to actually make it through turn 1 without incident, and really so far so good on the first half of this first lap.
Well, it's all about the Mustangs as it comes to the front of the field. 1, 2, 3, 4 there. Dennis Grabowski also piloting a Mustang at the moment, but it's going to have to look back in the mirrors at Michael Evdoka looking for a way through. As one car has a little moment through the corner. That was Matthias Pirhanen dropping down the timing tower as he falls behind Adam Watson and Tom Griggs, running to the most famous chicane in motorsport. And even though it's the most famous chicane here, believe it or not, only built in the early 1990s.
Yeah, but still nice and flowing. You always love seeing the start through Maggots, Beckett's, and going under the bridge as well. And now that's where we're going to start to see some of the drivers head heavy on the brakes, headed towards the new pit straight, the new Grand Prix pit straight, as teammates make their way around for side-by-side action for position. I believe that is going to be Griggs ahead of Watson there for that top 10 spots, is jostling for the back as we start this 45-minute race. And one thing that's going to be interesting too, not only the timing of the pit stops, but actually making it to your pit box without, well, there's a problem right there.
That's a big...
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Jeremy. That's a huge moment that's come through at that final chicane section. You've got Adam Tompkins, who's caught up, Michael Gray, the Pro-Am, and Arthur Thurtle. So I think Thurtle and Tompkins have come together going through that section. But a lot of side-by-side now down into the mid-pack at the moment as we focus now on that charge through the opening couple of corners and out then through Aintree and on towards the Wellington Straight. That is with Dan McCauley and Eric Muxka at this stage, and another spinner behind us, one of the AMG Mercedes pointing the wrong way, and Richard Simnor then in trouble in the Atomic Esports XDCW Mercedes, then having all sorts of troubles on the start.
Well, it took him till the start of lap 2 to really start having some sort of shemazel, which is interesting. Here's the replay of the first incident, and yeah, just a couple of corners getting a little too feisty through club, setting up down towards the Hamilton Street. We're talking about that pit in and how important it's going to be to make it through there with these 45-minute races, and more than just 2 cars involved, 3, 4, 5 cars, and that's been the name of the game for some of these opening lap incidents this year.
Yeah, it's always very difficult. They do have the one fast repair available to them. Drivers like Ben Altria, for example, has been one of them. That's straight across the chicane. They're going through and trying to hurtle along through the gravel. It's very rare that you see that when you go through. Daniel McCauley having to rejoin circuit there, the AM driver in all sorts of trouble, and immediately having to give that up to Jonathan Walker under the Johnny Walker Bridge.
Yeah, Maggots and Beckett's not a good place to have that sort of incident slowing through Stowe right now. And I would imagine there's some sort of damage with the high speed commitment through those corners. But already, and usually it's the first lap we talk about being mayhem. Well, as we said, now it's the second lap with at least 3 incidents taking place.
At least 3 is the key, and everyone tries to avoid. So there's the loss of speed, and there's the tap that goes around, and nowhere you can go really to avoid that. The car always broadside, trying to gather back up that grip again and having to really scramble across the circuit to find any form of respite out there as they run once again towards turn number 3. So out through Farm and in through the village corner, and Brian Lloyd's going around for a spin after the great qualifying. There's the spin, and that will cost at least 15 to 20 places.
it seems like that, yeah, that middle of the pack is where we're seeing the problems. And that is a desperation. You know, who knows, as Loynes comes back into play, several positions down, all the way down to 38th overall, now 39th, as Andy Archer gets around Loynes.
Benjamin Gregory, one of the drivers who's made good progress in the Boosted Motorsports machine, a team that has been in and around the British sim racing scene for well over a decade out there, and is looking to see some good improvements out there at this stage. Has already gained the 9 spots on the opening couple of laps of this one, and through on Håkon Ida Lindmer, and then dealing with Ben Bennyworth behind that. Eric Muxka there in the mix, and they're trying to chase down Byron Crawford. This small gap that is starting to develop here as packs of 6s and 7s and 4s are starting to build themselves together. Effectively, you build yourself a couple friends out there on track. It's 6 clear at the front of this field.
Yeah, so far so good near the front of the pack, but yeah, in the middle of the pack, that's where we're seeing a lot of the slicing and dicing as they're making their way down the hangar straight. This is McCauley going around to the inside of Alistair Kirk. Now, that's not for class position, that's for overall position. A little quick refresher, you see on the left-hand side of your screen, our tower, the green numbers are the pros, the yellow numbers are the pro-ams, and the blue are the AMs, so that's interesting to note. This, a lot of out-of-class battle, you know, at the back of the pack. You'll see those more near the front. What's also interesting, normally we see at least one pro or one pro-am in the top 10. Jake, I'm seeing all pros in the top 10 right now.
Taking a look at the very washed-out face of Daniel McCauley at the moment. There, the bright screen there as he has to leave the door open, because down the inside tries Joe Newman. The Pro-Am gives him a bit of biff. You could see the fight on the steering wheel as the contact was made through the corner. Newman loses out to McCauley, but it shows you the concentration level you have to go to. And is it I Spy time? Because I see in the bottom right corner of his picture the helmet that's there. So that will give you a great indication of the experience Dan McCauley has.
Yeah, McCauley, one of the front runners in this class, so no surprise to see him up there, as you see the 997 right behind as well. Heading down the former Grand Prix pit straight, also coming out of Woodcott, heading through Cops. But already some flashing of the headlights, a little bit of a distraction there for some of the drivers.
It very much will be, and drivers will go to every trick in the book to try and go through. Hi, Paul. How you doing, mate? 36th position. That, I would say, has been a great start for Paul right now. You can definitely sense he's got a lot of concentration going on right there, because the tongue is certainly out of the mouth as he thinks through each and every single corner, and you love to see that everyone looks to try and put as much effort as possible into this, and Paul very much in concentration mode, and while he very much should be, because he's got Brian Loynes in front, and behind him Elliot Roberts, Andy Archer, Paddy Falconer, Nathan Healy and Jacques Eva, all there together.
I just want to see him do well. You know, past couple of races have not gone his way, but I think, you know, this is more of his track. It's a little bit wider spaces. I think Paul's going to do well. Not too far away from him. Yeah, there's that battle for position that we mentioned with a couple of Mercedes right there. You're on board with Patrick Faulkner in the number 98 Atomic Esports DCW AMG. I just love the sound of this V8 roaring down the Hamilton Straight.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sight to behold, and the sound of it is incredible as well, as now running in through Village and looking to try and get this short shoot run to the 120-degree left-hand bend. You're really trying to work off the exit then of turn 4 of now into Aintree and onto this next section here, the Wellington Straight, which effectively forms the national layout of the circuit before the renovations of the early 2010s came to play, and the long left-hand then of Brooklands Corner that leads into Luffield, this fantastic hairpin where you're just waiting for the power to come back down. This being a former airfield, it's one of the uniquenesses of a track like this. The lack of elevation certainly makes corners like those a lot harder, especially on tyre wear.
And I know why we changed the Grand Prix layout of Silverstone back in the 2010s. But I think this has benefited stock sports cars, I should say, more, maybe even stock cars and touring cars, because it adds another beneficial passing zone to this facility, which had, what, 1, 2, 3 already so far. But yeah, watch the commitment here. So he goes through Maggots, Beckett's, and around Chapel Curve as well. As just so much high commitment. You got to get through there, and then you've got to get it all right, or else you'll end up having a problem like we saw about 10 minutes ago.
It's so easy to do. Falconer very much following in the wheel tracks of the car in front of him, which is Andy Archer, who is there and holding a very nice scenario out there at this point, despite the fact that he's been a little bit liberal so far in the Atomic Esports car. He's been working hard to find places then against the likes of Elliot Roberts, for example. He's been looking for a way through, but keeping an eye on balance of performance out there. The front of the field has been the majority of them in the Mustangs, and a lot of AMG Mercedes as well. So it's clear that two cars have the best. Archer down to the inside, can't leave that door open there, because that's straight back through from Elliot Roberts, and that is the high level of commitment that you need on some of the defenses as you go around. And it means now for Paddy Falconer, he gets a freebie.
Yeah, Falconer has it, and Healy, he wants a part of it, but not able to catch up. A whole bunch of Mercedes there in line. And of course, also something we mentioned a couple of weeks ago is we're going to see the Aston Martin come into the service as well. So it'll be neat to see who transitions over from whatever they had to the Aston Martin. But so far, yeah, like you said, it's heavy Mercedes, heavy Mustang, because a lot of your front runners, Boomy, McFarlane, Meyer, and Davidson, all are running in that Mustang format.
Yeah, we've been keeping a great eye here in the mid to rear pack of the field. A bit of side by side that has been throwing itself together, and a lot of love going to the rear of the field as well, with all the amazing scraps that have been going on and the places that have been changing. Like Aiden Carter, for example. I keep an eye on your AM category leader currently, which is Franek Sikorsky, who is third in the championship currently for AMS, and doing a wonderful job out there with the likes of Payne Wilkins, who has been very close behind. No move then on screen, moving through in Stowe Corner, which is one of the most aggressive places. In comes Elliot Roberts, by the way, to the pit. So that will be with a slowdown penalty, as well as Archer will now see Adam Tompkins trying to recover through the field and move a way back through. But as it goes, there is no stop with this series. Chris Chatterton now finding a way to defend. Joe Coffin then trying to work a way through, back with Dan McCauley, Byron Crawford, and Håkan Ida Lindmo.
A little bit of bump there as we're on board with McCauley. You know, one has to wonder where he would be right now if he didn't end up having that incident. But so far, so good. Nice recovery, up to 28th overall. As, yeah, the first pit stops are underway. Let's see where Elliot Roberts comes out. Was it too early? Was it a gamble? That remains to be seen here in this 45-minute race. So it looks like somebody already went off around coming out of left field, so that'll be interesting to see if that's part of the problem. But nonetheless, another great battle here for position in the front part of the middle of the pack.
Yeah, so that continues on as they go through the nice Castle Combe there. So it's Lee Berridge, who's had a massive tank slapper through the middle of the corner, and the car has just said nope, going to go the other way. So that is how quickly a car can switch on you if you're not paying attention. And right now, Joe Coffin doing all what is required at the moment to keep behind Dan McCauley. But when you've got Chatterton and Newman there, the more that you start to defend, the tougher it is to stay with cars in front. And Coffin on the outside is going to try and hold even on the braking markers between them, but sweeping around the outside with commitment. Joe Coffin with a great hold, but McCauley could try and cross the beams. He'll try to the outside here, heading through towards the Vale, and it doesn't quite pay off. So this is a case of a finding out process here in the opening 15 minutes of this race. Remember, they're limited to half the fuel tank, so they all have to come down in and make a pit stop.
Yeah, that's some great defense here. Something I noticed real quick, Ben Ultria, who's well up in the AMS category, had to take an extensive pit stop, so he's all the way back to 50th. It might be race over for him. He's hoping that we can do a full field reset here after this race, but we'll find out in 30 minutes time what happens there. As there's your leaders, Boomy, McFarland, and Davidson, 1, 2, and 3. Anders Meyer also sitting back there in 4th place, so your top 4 at least, all Ford Mustangs with altitude 2 WSRs in front right now. And that's been the story of the past couple of races with Boomy and Davidson, and sometimes McFarland getting involved as well, as it looks like this Macaulay Coffin battle really heating up. Maybe have been at least one wheel off by the 21 Macaulay, but he's able to muscle his way around the outside of Woodcock.
He's trying to work out after Woodcock Corner here at Cox, side by side. One of the toughest places to go too wide. And I think he keeps his boot in it and has a chance here to Maggots and Beckett. So he's going to be on the inside of Maggots, the left of Beckett's. He holds the place through the next left-hander and over towards the right, and then Chapel the left that opens up onto the next phase of circuit. Dan Macaulay knowing exactly how wide his machinery was and holding that place through. Wonderfully constructed. It cost them a lot of time, but critically a place made, and that is the big key.
Yeah, now he's the sight set on Chatterton, just about a second or so up ahead. Now they've got a battle here for position. Oh, never mind, as one of the cars decides they're going to take their pit stop. That's Ida Lindmo in the Nomad McLaren.
Yep, so you got to really slow it down when it comes to pit lane here. They're down to just 60 kilometers an hour. John Williams in Pro-Am also is following into the pits. So for Håkan Ida Lindmo, that is a very important stop on the docket. Just then, this next group of 3, this is Aiden Carter then in Pro-Am, who's under pressure from Tommy Vettel, the Norwegian here, who's figuring out what to do. 6 places gained from 24th to 18th. Payne Wilkins behind, up 7 spots in AM category and 2nd overall of all the AMs currently there in the blue and white behind. The car directly in front of them is the leading AM, Franek Sikorsky, an AM that in certain series we've got here on RaceSpotTV, which I believe is the Radical series that currently runs out there at the moment in time. Quite simply put, he's been so quick sometimes that he's not been called an AM, he's been moved up to pro. So to say Franek Sikorsky is an AM, he is one of the quickest AMs you can possibly find.
Exactly. You almost wonder if they've been using the FIA driver ratings. Oh, look at that move by Aiden Carter, able to take a defense, which, by the way, the past couple of races has run some absolutely gorgeous paint schemes in that Lamborghini, running more of an Italian flavor this time out. But in spite of the bonnet being on, Jake, that's an absolutely gorgeous scheme for that Lamborghini.
It is a wonderful livery out there, and it is a shame that the bonnet's completely popped off of the car. It's just adding extra cooling at the moment as into the pits comes Aiden Carter on cue to make that stop. Josh Boot now looking for a way through here in the Mercedes, looking at the likes of Payne Wilkins, thinking there is a great chance to go and get that pass with Jonathan Walker and Phil Samways then on the back, starting to coalesce this group into a pack of 5 out there at this moment. So it's really showing where the intent is. And speaking of that intent, 1 second deadlock broken at the front between James Boomy and Ross McFarlane. And I think that is really critical, because we talk about slipstream. Once you fall outside of 1 second, it becomes harder and harder to follow in the tracks. And McFarlane and Davidson, WSI Esports, they are one of the best teams out there in sim racing. And James Boomy, I think, is proving he's one of the best sim racers out there.
Well, he really is. And of course, you know, you've got Ross McFarlane and Alexander Davidson. Their teammates are nose to tail within a second. So now it's gone from, okay, we need to catch up to Boomy so we can battle with them. But really, there's always one race where Boomy is just so dominant. And I think this is going to be that one race. We'll see if that still holds true during the pit stop cycle.
We certainly will do, and the pit stop is the moment of truth for many of these drivers, and they've not made a single move in this group. Anders Myhre in 4th, Marley Joffe in 5th, and then Dennis Grabowski, who was a former member of the Pure Racing team back in the day. That got coalesced into Team Redline in terms of the merger that was made. So Dennis Grabowski is a lightning fast sim racer who has been right up at the pointy end of sim races out there time and time again. But it stays with this group, happy as they are at the moment. No one willing to rock the apple cart, because I think what they'll try and do here, Jeremy, I don't know about you, run the tank to dry and then have a quick pit stop at the end. When the car's got less fuel in it, it's at its lightest.
It really is, and yeah, that's what they've been doing the past couple of, actually all 4 races, so no surprise here, and it looks like that Boomy's starting to dispatch with some lapped cars as he puts Lee Beeridge, who just came out of the pits, 1 lap down, so 50 cars on the lead lap, and more importantly, a buffer between Boomy and McFarlane.
And that buffer is critical, and when you get a car in between, the traffic gives and it also takes away. So McFarlane's got work to do, so too Alexander Davidson, Anders Myhre, Marley Joffe, Dennis Grabowski. They all know they've got work to do, but they've got 4 seconds to the next pack of Harrison Crowther and Michael Evdoka, who find themselves together looking for some consistent points out there. So that group will stay as they are. Over to the inside turn, outside goes the likes then of Lee Berridge, and it's very scary because you've got to work out where you're going to get that clearance. And Anders Myhre flies on by, and now having to take an extended line around then was Marley Joffe. So that got very, very sketchy, and a little bit of contact there with the boosted media car off the exit for Dennis Grabowski. Just about gets his clearance, but he will feel a little bit of grief there about that, because he did very well to follow through the S's there, through Chapel against Marley Joffe, and saw it all go away at the final moment.
By the way, while we're watching this battle, kind of watching timing, and I've watched it since practice and qualifying, tip of the cap to Tom Greg's in the top 10. He's been having some issues the past couple of weekends, and it's great to see him up in 9th place, about a second and a half ahead of Piernan, but he's got Evdoka in his sights for 8th place, so having a great race so far.
Well, it's been a wonderful race to keep in mind, but we are still very much not at the realm of done, as the focus now is going to be on this battle heading itself to the Vale. And how close will Josh Boot be in terms of making this pass, knowing that every single time that you sit down in line, you're looking to attack on every corner on the exit to gain that place, but it's never as easy as that. Tom Griffiths down in the pits, but Jonathan Walker's holding his place. Josh Boot can only watch for the moment, 19th and 18th at the moment, giving their scraps, as we've probably had about a third of the field decide it's time to pit.
And these next couple laps are going to be critical to see what happens there. Right now, watching this battle, German Engineering with American Brute coming around for that 19th spot, 18th I should say now. That's Jonathan Walker in the 88 Mustang. So those two locked in battle so far, about a 1 to 2 car length gap down into the Wellington Straight. And yeah, this is a great battle here, and neither of these drivers have pitted yet. The first driver on track to pit is Aiden Carter, so kind of get a sense of where some of these drivers who 29th on up, where they may or may not end up when they decide it's their time to come in.
And if it is their time to come in, they will be looking at trying to hit their marks and steal a march on the drivers around them. They will know that part of those new GT3 updates that have come into play is that the tyre life, it takes a couple laps to get them up to temperature. That's why drivers will actually quite like to stay out longer, I would feel, in some respects, Jeremy, because the overcut has some merit now.
It really does. We're on board with Dennis Grabowski, and you know, we've seen how some of these drivers have changed their driving styles because of the new tire model in this latest GT3 update. It kind of models more of what you see in an SRO, in an IMSA, in a WEC with these GT3 cars. So I think it's absolutely fantastic what iRacing is doing to really mimic what it's really like behind the wheel.
Yeah, and that snap of oversteer on the power for Denis Grabowski is something that he's going to have to try and train himself out of as he runs through through turn 4 on circuit at the loop. It's so easy to have the car just snap about, and this is what I think certain drivers love when they get up to the highest level. They like a level of pliability with the car. The moment that you try and step the power down, the car tries to step out. You have an understanding of where the limit is because the car tells you by saying, no, that's too much.
Yeah, when the car says too much, you'll be lucky if it just says, hey, this is too much, because sometimes it just goes, nope, I'm done. And then the back end wants to see what the front end's looking at as some of the drivers coming out of their pits. Josh Boot was the most recent, Byron Crawford. Howard Hassan actually in the pits as well. So Griffiths actually had a Boot. So that's, we're starting to see a lot more drivers come into the pits. There's Tom Griffiths coming out, and around the loop, I've got to say, that's actually, you see the difference between the hot tires and the tires just coming out of the pits.
You certainly do. Phil Samways is there and has been there for a while, and Josh Boot sees Tom Griffiths able to hold that station. There's a lot of strategy that comes into play. Big wide line taken there by Griffiths, and the reason why is you can take that narrow, I'll hold the inside line, but if you can open up the corners, that's big. Marley Joffe then from the race lead section group is going to be the first of them to come in and make a stop. He will not be followed in by anyone in that group, and so this will give a real indication out there, Jeremy, on what Marley can do. Will he be in chains, or will he have his Christmas carol come true?
It's going to be interesting indeed, because we see all Mustang at the front. It'll be interesting to see a Mercedes lead the point at some point and maybe even take the win. Will it be enough? Who knows, as we see Boomy, McFarland, and Davidson making their way into Brooklands. And look at that, the 12-9 stop for Joffe. Let's see where he comes out right now. Set for about, the 17th, but still Newman and Chatterton, who have the warmer tires, that might come into play. But I think that 17th right now is probably about as good as we can do for pit stops. And what's interesting too is, let's see if Boomy sets a fast lap on his inlet, because we've seen that the past couple of times.
We certainly have done. It's always a strategy. You got to be the fastest on your in lap, fastest in the pit, fastest on your out lap, and it all works into play. And just as we've said that, Jonathan Walker and Marley Joffe have come together on circuit. So Joffe, who went down the inside at Brooklands corner, tagged a car that went wide there, and Walker, who's trying to square up the apex, was on a little bit of no man's land, and ultimately Marley Joffe forces contact, and that's the sort of contact I'd look at, Jeremy, as we take a look at the replay here on the top of your screen. Oh, it's clumsy.
It is, especially because he was just right there on that corner. Any race stewart's going to look not too kindly on that, as Boomy comes into the pits. Your race leader dives into the pits and brings a whole lot of other cars with him.
And as that was happening, Joey Petrig, who was running inside the top 15, has had himself a spin coming out of Chapel 2, so he's been in trouble. But everybody is down in the pits, and they've got AM category traffic in front as well pitting in the form of John Roberts. So they've got to try and work everything out there. Now, will there be enough of a slowdown with the strategy that had to be put into play? The car leading the pits is Colin Sansom, who will just keep himself out of trouble. John Roberts with a quick hey and bye, and it's going to be about where that jump goes. 11.5 seconds, 12.7 it will be for James Boomy. He's coming up to speed, and he's got a lot of gap compared to what he needs, but Ross McFarlane has been the one who stayed closest. Only Alexander Davidson has stayed out longer with Denis Grabowski.
Something that I noticed too, that Boomy was in the slow lane the whole time. Everybody else is in the fast lane. Let's see if there's a ruling on that, because you don't normally see that. You see everybody taking that fast lane on the right-hand side of your screen, coming off the pits, but Boomy just running through everybody's pit stall, which was a little interesting.
Well, in theory, it's a lot safer to do that here in iRacing because you can make contact in the fast lane, but your car goes ethereal and goes in the slow lane. So that is an advantage that is out there compared to not. Paul Smith, for example, down in the pits. Adam Tompkins pitting as well as Ben Bennyworth. And there's a little nibble trying to find a place on the exit. Tommy Vettel there for Racing Lab's going to lose out the position. So Racing Lab will see that place and see that it's gone away. And that was very nicely constructed going onto the straights. There is Alexander Davidson, who will dive down into the pits and depart then from the race lead. He really had to slow that down as he was heading to the line. He had a little bit of locking there, and he had to go down to about 35 kilometers an hour just to make sure he didn't get a speeding penalty as he goes underneath the wing here at Silverstone.
And that is such a crawl down pit road. We've seen it bite some drivers as we're watching Boomy, I believe that is, coming around the circuit. No, that is as he comes through into club. And look at how close McFarland is to the 28. Still far enough to make something happen, but not far enough to really be too much of a factor. 12-4 out of the number 55.
Oh, it's close, but he's going to get through. James Boomy does what he needs, and Alex Davidson overcuts Ross McFarlane and gets into second place. Now, will the two WSR cars say, that's what I want, because Davidson's second in the championship? First, remember, is James Boomy, and will Ross McFarlane take that sitting down, or will he want to move up to second and say, no, I also want to fight for this championship? We've got a couple retirees out there. Taylor Lane, I think, is one of them. Josh Boone is going to be another out there as they rush on through. But James Boomy did really well to build the gap, but ultimately that gap's being slashed in half. He'll have to do it all over again with 14 minutes to go.
And he also has to do it with lap traffic this time. Boomy had the advantage early on to have clear track. Right there, there's Roberts in the 86, and that is the first driver that he's going to come across. Roberts already has done, actually, Barrage has done it. Roberts is not. So you got Roberts, Sampson, and Healy to go through in order for Boomy to preserve his lead.
Yeah, and critically as well, Dennis Grabowski has leapfrogged the likes of Anders Myra and Marley Joffe in the stop. So they will be now into 5th and 6th, with Grabowski in 4th. We take a long look on the stretch. There's the two in front, John Roberts and Colin Sansom. Now, here's where it gets awkward. When you lap traffic, they have every right to battle.
Yeah, and we saw how that happened yesterday in the IndyCar race. It ended in tears, but Roberts trying to battle to get Sampson be the last car on the lead lap. It's Porsche over McLaren right there as we see more traffic that is set to go one lap down. And Boomy already trying to get in the head of those drivers. He knows, he's like, hey, I've got faster drivers behind me. Get out of the way.
He wants them through as quick as possible, but remember, it's GT rules. It's advisory. It's not mandatory. He will get right up onto the rear. He'll clear John Roberts, and he'll have to force his way to the inside to make that happen. And John allows Alex Davidson to follow by in tow. Ross McFarlane has it a little bit more difficult then through the loop and Aintree corner to just get that launch along the straight. Boomy now trying to get in the mirrors to say to Colin Sansom, can I get by? And he has miscommunication into the corner there. Sansom very nearly got turned around by James Boomy, and he gets well out of the way, but Alex Davidson now is right on the rear of James.
And that lead's been cut in half. It's easy to say when it's 6/10 to 3/10, as Davidson now smells blood in the water. This is one of the first times that I think Boomy has shown some sort of problem with anything. He's not put a toe wrong all this whole season so far. Now, we'll see if Davidson can capitalize on a rare mistake out of the number 28.
Whoa, it's a huge hit in the background there. Someone's gone flying into the wall, and it's Colin Sansom who was there to lap traffic then. So Sansom having a big moment as he slid on by, and he tried to avoid the contact, then going back across the circuit to collect Anders Myra, and instead found himself in the barriers.
Yeah, that's not a place you want to go off, because any off is going to be big. He left the bumper cover there at the gravel trap. So we'll see if he decides to come in or if he's just going to stay out. I mean, it's 11 minutes left. What can you do here? Not sure if he's taking his fast repair or not. Here's William Guthrie, one of the drivers that we've seen up near the front in Pro-Am. This is a battle for the Pro-Am lead between Guthrie and Osborne. That's for 12th overall. Those are the two highest placed drivers in Pro-Am right now. Frank Sikorsky, your highest placed AM driver, in 15th, but this is a great battle for position here overall and in class.
Yeah, so this is for the AM category lead. Jack Osborne, by the way, is 12th in Pro-Am at the moment and down on 132 points. William Guthrie is the championship leader by 2 over Aidan Carter. So this is a critical pass for William Guthrie. It will give him a huge jump on Aidan, who's 3rd in class at the moment, as they rush through at Abbey, go through Farm and find themselves up in the village at turn number 3. It's just not enough of an angle. You need an extra 50 meters to go and make that pass or have a little sniff, and he has a nibble off the exit. Now, will he be hungry for a full meal? The answer to that is no. William Guthrie is certainly showing against Jack Osborne that he wants every position. Middle of the road defense comes into play under the bridge and over towards Brooklands.
Well, looks like he could only get an appetizer at Aintree. Tries to get the full course at Brooklands. Not going to happen. He's got a couple of great opportunities coming up, but makes his way slowly around left field as they set up for Woodcott into Cops here shortly. Under 10 minutes left. There's plenty of gap between the first and the second course. We'll see how long it takes for those courses to be served.
Well, the questions will be asked. They've only got 9 minutes, 20 seconds to go, so I think it's a case of get yourself a bag and take it back out onto the streets with you in terms of what they need. Jack Osborne has been doing wonderfully in terms of defence, and speaking of needing defence, I look at that race lead, and Alex Davidson continues to close that down, and the Scot eyeing up James Boomey with everything he's possibly got. The altitude frame car that leads this race has led practically every lap he's tried to at the front. James Boomey is now holding himself steady at this stage, but this is where Alex Davidson now can just sit and apply the pressure. You don't get much closer than that to the loop. That sends a message.
And of course, Barrage, the next car that will be 1 lap down. So the second time the Barrage will go 1 lap down. That is, depends on who's going to put up a lap down. Boomey hopes it's him, but Davidson, he's going to try his best to make sure that it is him instead. Not too bad through Brooklands. It's interesting how Davidson, oh, look at that tighter exit through Brooklands, heading around left field. That may be what Davidson needs to try and make a defense over Boomey to try and get back up to the point.
When you look at these drivers, that was a mistake there by James Boomey. He missed the apex by about half a car width, basically, but that's the level they're driving at. Half a car width is a big mistake in the book. Davidson wasn't in position to capitalize, but if he gets a good run here out to Beckett's through the left, through the right, looking at Chapel Corner, it's going to be a wonderful chance then to say, this is what I'm all about. Entering the hangar straight where they used to put the Spitfires as they ran back in World War II. Here comes the charge of the likes of Alex Davidson. He's not going to be close enough, stuck at half a car length behind, but he is all over the back of James Boomey. It's just going to take an opportunity. A feint to the inside, moves to the outside to try and get the launch. Boomey is so defensive right now. Double up and undercoming. Great block.
Fantastic block heading towards the Hamilton straight. And of course, when Boomey looks in his mirrors, he sees not just 1, but 2 white Mustangs there who want that position. Evdaka with an off right there in the back part of the circle. We're watching this battle for the lead really tighten up between Boomey, Davidson, and now McFarland. Make it 3 cars who want the lead from 2 teams as Evdaka comes back into the pits. The top 2 nice and tight around the loop, headed towards Aintree and down the Wellington straight, but Boomey able to have just a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, Michael Docker here, this is on his own. He just overcooks it, tries to save it, grabs the gravel, and ends up sliding back across the circuit. Does make contact, so has to come down in for the fast repair and get back going again. This will cost him vital points for what he's hoping for in the World GT Championship season. But James Boomy, I think, has weathered the initial onslaught then of the two WSR cars of Davidson and McFarlane, but they've got Lee Berridge turning up on the horizon, and that's going to be their next big scare. And James Boomy, I think, is hoping A, for that time to tick down, and B, for open space.
If I'm doing my math correctly, we have about 3 laps to go at the line. Of course, Berridge with the deciding factor right now, as he is the next car to be put 1 lap down. Boomy, Davidson, and McFarlane, 1, 2, 3 down the hangar straight, and Boomy's going to get right up under that McLaren. Going to make easy work of him, and so will Davidson. But can McFarlane get around before they get to Stowe? Yes, he does, because Berridge has discretion, the better part of valor, and decides to back off and let the top 3 battle amongst themselves.
Yeah, that was good work from the lap traffic, and that's what we do like to see, knowing their place in terms of, I know this is a big battle, I don't want to insert myself into it and be the cause of what goes on. So Lee Berridge wisely backing out of it and allowing the top 3 to race for the victory. And it might just come down to last lap heroics out there, because Alex Davidson has been trying what he can. A 58.1 there by James Boomy, and by comparison, that's only half a second off of his fastest lap overall in this race, which was a 57.6. And all of these drivers were within about a 1/10 of a second of their fastest laps of the race together. So they've certainly been showing that they've got a lot of pace. They're trying to prove they can burn it. But for the moment, James Boomy, I think, will feel a little bit of solace in the fact that he's got himself about a car length and a half.
Yeah, but we've seen how close Davidson has been closing in on Boomy. That car and a half, yeah, that's great, but at the same time, 1 wheel wrong, and Davidson is going to pounce. Coming down onto Woodcock, down the original pit straight, are your top 3, Boomy, Davidson, and McFarlane. 1, 2, 3. You just take a look, and it looks like just 1 car coming right at you. As everybody through Cops, so far so good, as Meyer and Jaffe in a battle for 5th place. But look at that, a little bit of a wiggle there out of Boomy.
And that's going to be causing all sorts of troubles. They're now dancing the beams behind them right now, and that's Dennis Grabowski, is that there? No, sorry, I'll correct myself. There's Anders Meyer and Marley Jaffe. So Jaffe now up into 5th position. Meyer falls back to 6th, but as a little bit of cloud cover comes over the circuit, a little bit of cooling for those tyres, James Boomy sees again that Alexander Davidson is so good on the brakes, and that's going to be where the scare is. Davidson fades to the inside, tries to get large in the mirrors again, doesn't quite find what's necessary, but he's going to the Sim Racers hand guide on how to make a pass. It's the first thing you say, get wide.
Get wide indeed, about 2 laps left to go in this race. Boomy hopes that time goes by quick. Davidson wants to go just a little bit slower. And I'm sure at the end of the race, one of those drivers is saying, if I only had more time, because this race is fantastic. This is the stuff legends are made of. These are the 2 drivers who have won at least one race in pro. They've each won a race each weekend, as Boomy tries to make it 3 weekends out of 3 that he has won 1 race. Davidson, though, going to try and make it his 3 for 3 down the Wellington straight, closes within a half car length around Brooklands, and this is where we've seen Boomy really have some sort of issue with making the car wide or not getting tight enough around the corner.
Look at that, a fantastic look at the rear of that Ford Mustang GT3 that leads the race of James Boomy. He's really being put into the ring. He knows he doesn't have to worry going into Copse Corner. It's a closed apex as you go in. Very tough to throw the car down the inside there in GT3 spec. Now they'll move here to Maggots Corner, the flick left, in through the right. Beckett's the second flick left, and then Chapel, which will be the 3rd flick left in terms of this lap. Now Alex Davidson needs a drive, but James Boomy absolutely perfect on the exit, muscling his way to try and hold himself steady.
think it's about the biggest gap we've seen Boomy have over Davidson going into Stowe. And I take that back. It's about as close as it has been. McFarland now playing the interested spectator. Well, if something happens to both of those cars, which... Oh,
let him have it.
Davidson loses it.
I think he'd just let him have it. I think that's a case of, I think I'm faster, I think I can get a move done, I'll let you have the place. That felt like team orders to me between Davidson and McFarland, and it now leaves one lap to go, where James Boomy suddenly has himself a huge margin out there at the front, 7/10 of a second, and that could be a gift wrapped up, signed, sealed, and delivered. If Ross McFarlane's got anything left, he's got to throw an absolute howitzer down at James Boomy if he wants to try and win this race. This comes down to who's got enough nerve, and every apex now, this will feel like relief for James Boomy, but Ross McFarlane now is going to have pedal down to the metal, and he will know that he needs every corner to play a factor. Down to half a second is the margin, very much over the curve is James Boomy, down to 4/10 of a second it was for a brief whisper, but that gap still stands at half a second, or at about 5 car lengths at the moment, rushing about past the national pits on the right hand side. Spinner down there at the outer loop, and that's going to be dramatic for one of the Mercedes then out there at the moment. It's one of the Atomic Mercedes in trouble, and that's going to open up the doors. But now through this chicane for the final time of Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, it is where James Boomy knows that there is one throw of the dice left for Ross McFarlane. If it's not at Stowe, it will be an almighty send down at the Vale, and he's brought that gap to 4/10 of a second. He's got to do more in order to find it, because he knows that he's given everything he can and then some. 3/10 of a second. Ross McFarlane is like a runaway train. There's no stop in him, but James Boomy now sees he's just got to hit his mark and does so there. McFarlane looked for the inside. He struggled, but James Boomy, oh, that's a brilliant hole in terms of this race. 5 of the season, a big win in the context of this championship.
Win number 3 for the Altitude Freem Esports Mustang. And man, hindsight, that should have been, if they wanted to make that move, should have been done earlier, but we can all talk about it later. Here's your Pro-Am leader, William Guthrie. That was Jack Osborne who had the issue, but Guthrie, who's already been a race winner at least once this season in Pro-Am, comes around club, and he's going to make it official for another race win in Pro-Am.
He very much is, and did so wonderfully, and just having to defend everything that was there to spin certainly costed places made going through the final corner for Aiden Carter. Franek Sikorsky will take the AM category win, as we've still got battles heading towards the end. Joe Coffin then having to scrap with Dan McCauley out there for position, and there is your winner as briefly as we can for Project 91 Academy there, crossing the line. But some great scraps going right to the line. It's one of the shortest drag races to the line out to the final corner you can possibly find.
Yeah, Simnor trying to hold off Michael Gray for class position as it comes onto the Hamilton straight and takes that checker flag. Yeah, you just got to defend around club, and that's about it. Of course, it also means for any starts and restarts, it's going to be the longest drag for some drivers into Abbey and Farm. And yeah, just a couple of other drivers coming around to complete the first race. And Jake, you get to experience the toss-up and who's going to be inverted.
It's very much a touring car style invention that comes through with this championship, that there are going to be reverse grids that are brought into play. The spinning wheel decides where we are going to get, and how good is your number. It looks like 18 is going to be the mark, which will mean that Michael Evdoka will be the driver on pole position after his dramas in race 1. Here's the confirmation then of result, where James Boomy picked it up by 4/10 over Ross McFarlane. Alexander Davidson giving the place away with a lap to go. Some team orders then at WSR Esports. Dennis Grabowski will finish fourth, with Marley Joffe and Anders Meyer making up the top six, as Harrison Crowther and Tom Griggs would be 7th and 8th, as Matthias Pihanen would be 9th, and Adam Watson would round out the top 10. Over the page, William Guthrie, the winner in Pro-Am, would finish 11th with Joey Petrick, and Jack Osborne spinning on the final lap down to 13th, with Aiden Carter and Franek Sikorsky, the AM category leader in the AM category winner, in 15th. Tommy Vettel and Jesse Payne Wilkins would be 16th and 17th. The pole sitter for round 6 will be Michael Ebdoka in 18th position, as Phil Samways will be on the bubble and in 19th to get things going, with Tom Griffiths rounding out your top 20. Alistair Kirk and Jonathan Walker would be 21st and 22nd, ahead of Eric Muxka and Chris Chatterton. Joe Coffin and Daniel McCauley 25th and 26th, ahead of Adam Tompkins trying to recover, and Håkon Ida Lindmo in 28th for Nomad. John Williams and Brian Loynes would make up the top 30, as the likes of Andy Archer and Patrick Falconer would be 31st and 32nd, ahead of Ben Bennyworth and Byron Crawford. Richard Simnor and Michael Gray would still be on the lead lap, along with Benjamin Gregory and Arthur Thurtle had to spin in the early stages of the race. Drew Fletcher and Howard Hassan would make up the top 40, as Paul Smith, Jax Eva and Ben Altria, who had to take the extra stop because of incidents, would be in 43rd. Elliot Roberts, the first of the cars a lap down, including Nathan Healy, John Roberts, Lee Berridge and Colin Sansom, who was able to get a fast repair. The two retirees being Joe Newman, Josh Boot, and over the page for one more, Taylor Lane also being a retiree from that race. But Jeremy, I think as it comes down to it, and we talk about how critical of a championship it is in pro, the camaraderie between the teammates, I think Alexander Davidson will look at that and go, Ross, I did you a favor here in this race. I expect you to pay the favor back later on in the season.
Oh, I think Ross is going to say, well, that was a lap too late, because if you would have given it to me a lap earlier, I think I may have had a chance. And it was a very questionable move to do that on the penultimate lap. And if Ross knew that he was going to be faster, he should have gone up to the front. But then again, Davidson could have easily backed off. I mean, Davidson was close on several occasions, but Boomy was just too strong, too fast for this race.
And talk about this reverse grid for a moment, because we got a couple of AM drivers who are up there in the reverse, a couple of Pro-Am drivers who are in the reverse. It's such a different style of racing, having to go through slower drivers to move up. That's why we see these second races often, Jeremy, be a lot more difficult for incidents compared to race ones.
Well, I think with us only inverting 18, it's going to be a little bit better for these drivers to come from the back all the way to the front, because they won't have to go as front. Keep in mind, at Fuji, you had James Boomy having to come up all the way from last to fourth for the win. So I have a feeling that some of these pro drivers are actually liking the fact that they don't have to battle as hard in this 45-minute race here as they're getting ready for race number 2. But it's going to be interesting to see how long some of the Pro-Ams and the AMs can stay up near the front.
And we'll find out who will be staying up near the front and who will be looking to take points maxima heading over towards the meat and potatoes of the season. Stay with us here on RaceSpotTV for action of the World GT Championship, because Silverstone has another round coming up here. Round 6 is just on the horizon.
past all of them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
If you want battles, you are in the right place, with the first round of 2 here tonight at Silverstone proving to be a very frenetic affair at the front. It's a case of put 18 cars on the reverse and say, what can you do? Jake Sperry, Jeremy Scott bring you all of the action here of the World GT Championship here on RaceSpotTV and, of course, on the platform of iRacing. Jeremy, the key is going to be who gets a lightning start, and I look at the misfortune and malaise of Michael F. Docker in that first race. He's been given a huge lifeline here for this race too.
And of course, we're looking at the grid right now is of Daka and Payne Wilkins. Payne Wilkins, who is a race winner in AM, I should say. Both of those drivers are awfully quick, and if Daka had some misfortune early on in race number 1, would not be surprised to see a little bit of a struggle there once, Boomy and Davidson, once they get up near the front. Of course, also watching the chatter after the race, and there was a lot of disagreements on some contact. Most namely that battle for the Pro-Am lead there at the end.
Well, that's going to certainly ignite then in this race too, and I'm sure these drivers are not afraid to share their opinions, and Jack Osborne feeling like he was very much wronged in terms of the way that racing came about to it, but that's the way sometimes the cookie crumbles, and you just have to accept that life is pretty much a case of you never know what's going to happen over the course of a race. But, Jeremy, we've looked at some amazing racing like this. We've understood this 5.89 kilometer circuit, but one of the things that I think is a lot difficult for people to understand how difficult this place is, it is the fact that it is so wide and it is so expansive, and you do have to keep putting that level of pace on the board.
And I think having the walls so far apart really, I wouldn't say goads you into making a move you wouldn't make anywhere else, but I think it gives drivers a little bit more confidence to make that move, that low percentage move that they necessarily wouldn't make in certain tracks. So it's interesting to see some of these drivers really go at it, tighten those belts a little bit tighter, and decide, you know what, I think this is my time to make this pass.
It's very much a circuit that keeps the average speed up with the nature of the corners, because you've got a lot of circuit that you can run through to attack off the exit. It's a very wide, very expansive style circuit here, naturally built across with all of the airfields that have been run with. So now the drivers who want to go and make this race happen compared to those who just sit down, Jeremy, and think about this race as, oh, I'll let the race come to me. I think with a reverse grid style race, you can't let the race come to you, especially if you're on the bubble on the outside. If you're 19th, 20th, 21st, you've got to go and attack it and get it.
And of course, you think, oh, 45 minutes, that's a long time. But here's the thing. You can easily make a mistake, and those 45 minutes just seem like an eternity. So, you're going to see some drivers who make these passes early on, but at the same time, you really can't. So, and take a look at the track conditions. Almost perfect here as we're racing through Silverstone on game time and afternoon.
dare I say it, it looks like one day of summer that we get each and every year here in the United Kingdom at the moment with the conditions that they currently have. Of course, it has been a little bit wet over the last few days when it's come to the UK, so it's been one where I think a lot of these drivers are turning around and thinking, well, what do we do? And actually, what do you do in terms of the sim racing season? Because these are some drivers who are always trying to keep themselves up to speed with GT style racing. There's always a lot of great GT racing in and around, and these drivers will be using races like these to get themselves geared up for the iRacing special events.
Indeed, and we see some of these names up at the front who we normally see on these special event races. Some of the teams, your WSR, esports, your altitude. So no surprise. Of course, we also saw Williams come into play last week. Kind of sad that they're not here today because I think this kind of suits their track. That suits them just a little bit better. But then again, they're running a Mercedes. We've seen how the Mercedes are doing. As we see our buddy Paul Smith in those very iconic and easy to spot green, black, and I would say almost a purple color there on that BMW.
It's a purpley pink, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll get an understanding of what colour that is. It's very much a case of if you see it in the mirror, you know who's behind you. It's one of those sorts of liveries that you seem to find. But Paul certainly rocks it very well, and he certainly did okay, I think, for that first race. 45th to 41st, a gain of 4 spots, but sometimes it's about the attrition factor, and you might see it a lot more in race 2, but you have no more races in the night, Jeremy, to go and get your point, so drivers are going to maybe take more of the percentage chance.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a percentage chance, especially for those drivers who are involved in that invert, which, in the middle, you don't have to worry about because you're not moving around too much. But either way, it'll be interesting to see who makes that move early on. We've seen these inverted races end up in tiers for some in turn 1. Now, Abby, as we see, look how wide that is. It may not end in too much tiers, but still, I think that some drivers are going to go for that low percentage risk, knowing that they have to get up there because they don't want to have to battle or have any chance to battle for the lead later on. It's going to be very interesting to see how I'm going into race 2 with I'm going to hold my breath a little bit because I know what we've seen the past couple of races at the Bend and Fuji. Will we see something different here? I hope so, but I don't know.
That was Jacques Eva who is on screen and is the only driver in the field, by the way, to be running with a dedicated spotter. Cameron de Bastos is the spotter for the South Africans. So that's the case there for Rhino Racing of looking to try and charge head first and head first forward into a race like this and prove what's all about. Just pulling over to the side of the road there as the final preparations of practice come into a finished position. So the last of the drivers then looking to go about their business. Andy Archer, he's had a tough day. He's had to start from the very back of the field due to penalty to try and run himself back forward. So Andy Archer with the long day today, but he will need this race too to fall even further into his back pocket.
Yeah, the penalty really coming down hard on Archer, and I think now that he's gotten that done and out of the way, done and dusted, setting up sights for a little bit better start here in race number 2 as the clock winds down on this warm-up session.
So now it will mean that they will gear themselves up for racing prowess and how they stack themselves up. They will know how critical it will be for the next 45 minutes worth of running, plus any added time remaining at the end, or Fergie time as it is colloquially known sometimes. It will be all about who can manage what as far as this race falls into line. On the pole will be the 989 of Michael Ed Docker with Jesse Payne Wilkins alongside Tommy Vedel, and Franek Sikorsky will be 3rd and 4th as Aidan Carter and Jack Osborne will be in 5th and 6th positions. Joey Petrig will be 7th as William Guthrie in 8th will look to try and work her way back through. Adam Watson and Matthias Pirhanen having quiet races. They're 9th and 10th on the grid. Tom Griggs and Harrison Crowther are 11th and 12th with Anders Meyer and Marley Joffe in 13th and 14th. Dennis Grabowski will have Alexander Davidson for company, as Ross McFarlane and James Boomey will be 17th and 18th. Phil Samways will be the outsider looking in 19th, with Tom Griffiths for company. Alistair Kirk and Jonathan Walker will be on row 11. Row 12 is put together by Eric Muxka and Chris Chatterton there for Nomad. Joe Coffin and Daniel McCauley are 25th and 26th. Adam Tompkins will try and run through the field along with Håkan Ida Lindmo, as John Williams and Brian Loynes makes up the top 30. Andy Archer and Patrick Faulkner are 31st and 32nd. Ben Bennyworth, Byron Crawford, Richard Simnor and Michael Gray are 35th and 36th. The cars are already running, so the rest of your field will cycle across your screen, including Paul Smith in 41st position. The likes there of Nathan Healy with work to do, John Roberts and Colin Sansom. And right down at the back, we're down to just 48 runners today, so 3 are going to be gone from race number 1, which will include the likes of Taylor Lane. So for Michael F. Docker, it's the perfect scenario. Didn't get the best race 1, now has a bit of margin to work with in this race 2. A slew of AMs and Pro-Ams behind to keep the pros at bay. A good launch off the start, a green flag, and yeah, immediate trouble down to the inside wall. One goes into huge troubles out there off the start. It's Tommy Vettel.
Didn't even wait till the start to have all sorts of problems. So, well, at least there's that, which is nice. Evdaka, though, in the WSR Esports Mustang, looking pretty good. And there we go. More trouble near the back. It's one of the Altitude Mustangs who's involved in a spin.
Adam Watson is there, and there's another one of the effect simulation cars going around and having to take big avoiding action. There is everybody as he's stood spread eagle across turn 4 the outer loop. That's Tom Griggs finding trouble. So a lot of the pros then who are right up there near the front running into troubles, and immediately it's about who has made a good start. Petrick has done quite well off the get-go, but side by side, Anders Myra then down the inside of Matthias Pirhanen will take that place. Harrison Crowther looks on with Marley Joffe, and Alex Davidson making good progress off of the get-go. Someone who hasn't, who's been a little bit mired in the start, James Boomey.
Yeah, Boomey with a little bit not making his way up near the front, which is kind of interesting. Aiden Carter walking into the top 5 so far, as Meyer trying to hold off Pirhanen and Crowther for that 8th spot. But Evdaka already into a 1-second lead over Jesse Payne-Wilkins. Sikorsky sitting in 3rd place. So wild start, but really by race 2 standards we've seen the past couple of weeks, a team start.
Yeah, I would say it's been a nice quiet start for front drivers, but the middle of the pack has had a lot of frantic action to get things started, and they found almost 3 wide. Crowther sees Marley Joffe sneak down the inside, and Alexander Davidson wants a piece of that pie, thinking about where am I going to go, has to lift off of it, and that's going to open the door up on him. 2 wide, 2 deep, they go through the Vale and in through Club Corner. Davidson holds Grabowski off. McFarlane now will have a little piece of the pie and thinks about it but can't get there. Joffe now looking for the angle here on Crowther, heading over towards Abbey turn number 1 off of the Sir Lewis Hampton straight at 205 kilometers an hour.
That's book it, haul the mail, as they say, going into Abbey. And now we start to see that heavy braking zone. Some cars try to go 2-3 wide through Village to the loop. That's not something you really want to do, because you just tighten up through the loop.
You do tighten up, it does cost you a lot of pace, and you need a lot of speed with it. Grabowski, McFarlane and Boomey then battling with it side by side as well. Alex Davidson tries to go around the outside. Great tenacity here as McFarlane tries to deal with Dennis Grabowski for position. Marley Joffe stuck on the outside now as Alexander Davidson gets the place and moves up to 11th with that pass. McFarlane dispatched to Grabowski, and James Boomey not too far behind. Further in front of that, you've got some brilliant scrapping going on now for second, because it's the 2 AMs who are battling for the lead now of Category 2, Sikorsky and Payne-Wilkins.
Interesting to see Boomey mired back in that pro battle around 16th, where Davidson sitting in 11th so far. But really, this has been the MO of these races. If Boomey wins one race, Davidson wins the other, vice versa. So we'll see if that trend can be broken, or if somebody else wants to come in and get their first win of the season in the pro category. But Sikorsky all over the back of Payne-Wilkins for that AM lead. Of course, Jack Osborne, little head of steam there after after feeling like he was wrong in this spot right here with 2 to go, trying to get up in position, though leading in the Pro-Ams.
Yeah, he's got that Pro-Am lead over Aiden Carter. He's got to try and hold on to it with Joey Petrick and Anders Myra looking to give the big chase behind. There's going to be those pros who will look at Michael F. Docker with a little bit of green eye envy with how much of a gap he's got now. 1.6 at the front. Very much a wider line taken by Franek through the opening corners there. We take a look at Franek right now. Look at that. That is a stone cold face. If ever you see one, he'll have to try and do something about it. Door left open for Jack Osborne to start flying down the inside. Easy as it there. Little bit of a corner turned up there on the mouth there. A little smart to say, yep, you got me with that one.
And of course now has to hold off Carter, which Carter is definitely going to want to dispatch Sikorsky. Oh, that was almost a dive bomb into Brooklyn's extremely low percentage move, but Carter needs to get around Sikorsky to catch up to Osborne. Osborne just so quick so far as you're looking out of the front of Sikorsky in 4th place. Still trying to catch up to Osborne, but really with the 2 classes right there, I don't think that Sikorsky is going to be battling too much going through cops.
I was just looking at Anders Myra trying to think about around the outside of Cop's corner, and that was scary as Sikorsky's done so well. They're side by side with that now. There's almost contact through the first part. There is through the second, and Myra's going to go spread eagle across the circuit. Everyone's looking for an angle now to go through, and it's going to junk up to 3, even 4 wide in places. Who's the big gainer in all of that? Marley Joffe. There's contact between Davidson and Pirhanen going through the middle, and suddenly there's 10 within half a second. It's like rush hour on the M25 as they'll go 3 wide now, almost 4 as they go in towards then the next section. This is crazy stuff.
I've got to say this, yeah, you're 2, 3, 4 wide in this group, but not much is said about that save by there through Maggots and Beckett's. And look at this, we're still side by side through a section you really can't go side by side, almost 3 wide. You also want to say through goes Hamilton.
Yeah, onto the main straight again. Alexander Davison and Marley Joffe together. Joey Petrick's just been able to break away. William Guthrie, then Anders Myra with the save. Pirhanen is there. McFarlane, Grabowski, Harrison Crowther loses the place. Alistair Kirk, the Pro-Am, as there's going to be almost drama between them. James Boomey is in the middle of no man's land at the moment with Phil Samways at this moment in time. So he's really stuck in the middle at the moment. Watson, Muska, they're all there. They're all trying to go through. And look at this off the exit now. Myra's going to fight with Ross McFarlane, and they're going to trade paint along the straight, and still they go. Big push over to the left-hand side there goes Ross McFarlane as they throw it into the corner of Brooklands right in front of the Great British Drivers Association. Then as they go through, still trying to work around the outside. Myra, I think, is just going to get a slide through the middle of the corner. That's going to be 1. That might be Grabowski for 2, and maybe even Pirhanen for 3.
And you know what? Myra's lucky that he's losing the positions now rather than earlier when he was able to save it from spinning and collecting this whole pack here. You're on board with Pirhanen in 13th spot as really everybody trying to find their dance partner through comps so they can set themselves up for Maggots, Beckett's, and Chappell.
Yeah, Grabowski side by side. It's all about keeping momentum. He's kept the inside line. He's going to lean on Anders Myra, and Myra's going to hold the station. Car 20 racing out of Norway, doing a great job against the Russian Denis Grabowski and doing everything that is needed and then some against car 41, representing Serbia in iRacing at the moment in time, but now trying to run around the outside of Stowe Corner. If you can hold the gap then through the exit, you've got a great chance at the Vale. Brilliant stuff by Denis Grabowski. He'll get the place, and behind that will be a throw down the inside of Crowther on Matthias Pirhanen.
And you're seeing a lot of altitude Mustangs here in this group, which is really no surprise as everybody trying to jostle their way in. We're almost 10 minutes into this race, and we've had more action than we'd had in half of race number 1 just in this pack alone.
it's pretty much been as aggressive as it gets without it being overly dramatic in the way that it's gone about. We've had so much close quarters combat. It's just been a case of, have you had a chance to breathe over the opening 10 minutes? Remember, they've got to make pit stops and the like as Myra holds off Harrison Crowther's launch down towards the inside. And behind that as well, you can see in the backer shot, that's Alistair Kirk and Eric Muxka then battling then two pro-ams looking for it. Jonathan Walker is on the back of this with Adam Tompkins trying to find a way through, one of the pros.
Yeah, so far so good. As now you start to think, when do you want to take your pit stop? Do you want to do it early, take the undercut or the overcut? It'll be interesting to see when everybody pits, especially if you want to get out of this group and kind of find some clean air. Of course, it's pretty difficult in the middle of the pack. Here's a replay with Tommy Vidal, and yeah, just spun it coming out of club, and thankfully was able to get to the right and avoid collecting a good part of that field.
One thing we avoided in that replay was the fact that Paul Smith actually joined Tommy Vettel there in sympathy on the start of the race there. So very much a case of dramatic there right off the beginning. But second and third continuing on. This is your AM leader and your Pro-Am leader now battling side by side. Jesse Payne Wilkins lets that one go as that's a nicely played move by Jack Osborne. He's now up to second, 3.6 behind Michael M. Docker, who has walked out to a little bit of a Northamptonshire country stroll, I would say, at this moment.
Yeah, so far so good as we see Adam Watson involved. I believe it's going to be an Aiden. Yep, I'm not sure if Aiden Carter tapped or if that was a net code, but Watson already involved in a little bit of a ta-ta-ta in the Altitude BMW. What's interesting about Altitude is we see another driver involved. That's a Mercedes. But what's interesting about Altitude, Jake, is most teams have just one car. Altitude has the Mustang, or you can run the Mercedes if you'd like.
Oh, there's trouble for Alexander Davidson because Joey Petrick's been turned going through the loop, and that's now going to be a long wait for Joey to get himself back on the power and going again. He'll fall behind Dan McCauley out there. So Petrick then, you can see, door left ajar, tries to cover it off. Too late, Joey, too late.
Yeah, Joey left the door, and Davidson was able to shove that foot in there, and that's all she wrote, as Petrick just has to sit and wait, and now falls all the way back to 22nd overall.
And Joe Coffin right now, that is looking very much like a modified for him at the moment. The front clip completely disintegrated on the front there for him. So he's got a lot of work to do in the number 136 McLaren with Ben Altria there just behind. And this has been a tough day of damage limitation for Ben, who's been right up there in the championship for AM, and he gets a wonderful move done at Copse Corner. That front end downforce really missing there for Joe Coffin.
Yeah, Coffin's going to have to come in for that quick repair here shortly. Would not be surprised to see that happen in the next lap or so. But yeah, Altria just does not want to be involved in any sort of trouble, as we saw him early on, just involved in all sorts of problems in race one.
There are a lot of big movers in this race. Alexander Davidson is up 12 spots. Then as far as this race goes with the early forays, those a little bit further back, Paddy Falconer has had a very good run, has jumped up a good 8 spaces in this one. Michael Gray is up 11, 13, now 14, or 15 even, I'd say, for Ben Altria. He's having a great run of things at the moment, but there is the likes of James Boomey in the middle of this group. Behind him, Harrison Crowther, so he's gone through on that. Matthias Pirhinen makes it 3 in the train as Jesse Payne Wilkins loses the place then coming out of the outer loop, because that'll be Aidan Carter moving through to move into 3rd place. Not quite confirmed. You can see right in the back of shot, running into Brooklands. There's the look of the Trofeo-esque colours there of the Italian flag. Aidan Carter able now to move on to the podium.
Nice to see a bonnet on that Lamborghini this time, but Payne Wilkins sitting back there in 4th, and who's behind Payne Wilkins? Oh, that's Franek Sikorsky, and of course Alex Davidson sitting in 6th place, your 2nd highest pro driver. We'll see what Davidson has for Sikorsky and Payne Wilkins in the next couple of laps.
And where do you find those places? It's a case if you are the AM category drivers, it's damage limitation. Any place you can hold on to is great, but you've got the pros bearing their fangs down. Sikorsky has got, of course, Alexander Davidson looking for a way through. Marley Joffe and Ross McFarlane, they are there. And then just behind that, you've got William Guthrie trying to stave off Dennis Grabowski and Anders Meyer. But here comes the search to the inside. Doors left half ajar. Sikorsky's trying to pitch. There's a little bit of contact there, and that's going to open the door up a bit more. Just a little gentle nudge from Alexander Davidson to say, no, out of my way, sunshine, that's mine.
Yeah, you're in a different class than me. Let me get up there so I can battle with my teammates. And let's say teammate is Hodaka, still leading a quite healthy lead, actually, almost 5.5 seconds over Jack Osborne. And yeah, Osborne getting a much better start than he ended up finishing in this last race. But this battle here with the pro drivers coming up to the front. Joffe is battling with Sikorsky right there. You see that in the back of your screen. Ooh, a little bit of wiggle there from Sikorsky, as now we're 3 wide for a position between Joffe, Sikorsky, and McFarlane. McFarlane decides better of it going down the Wellington Straight and says, I will let you guys dance.
Well, Sikorsky there was certainly fading for an option, as there's a slow car. That's going to be Jesse Payne-Wilkins, who will drop the place on the brakes and says, you have that one, Alex, and go through. Sikorsky right out of the frying pan, straight into the fire. Right now, having to deal with Ross McFarlane, and it's a case of you do have to be very much alert to what's going on. A little adjustment of the glasses, the hair, they're trying to get a little bit of sentiment. McFarlane pretty much running the back bumper. They're going through the what used to be the opening corner here of Copse, and look at that, picking it up on the outside, which will turn to the inside. Such a clever move by Ross, because he'll get the inside for the critical corner of Beckett and confirms the pass. Well done, Ross.
Now Grabowski wants his chance to try and at least get up somewhere in the pro category, but he's got to get around Sikorsky for that. Guthrie sitting there rounding out your top 10. All 3 classes in the top 10. Oh, look at this dive to the inside. Anders Meyer, and there goes Grabowski with a decisive move into Stowe.
Yeah, Myers having to fight with William Guthrie and is going to get the place, but that was bold from Dennis Grabowski. He was very much looking at that going, yoink, I'll take that one, and that will be mine. So Frank Sikorsky now dropping back. 15, now 16 minutes had been conducted at 45. Very much in the pit window. Expect with about 15 minutes to go, everybody to jump down in, but it has been a calm race at the front for Michael Evdocker. 6 seconds clear at the line, and Davidson dispatching of Carter side by side as we see trying to get the run off the exit. It's going to be tough here going through Aintree, because you just don't get the downforce there, the Bulls, and he still muscles his way to give Aiden Carter something to think about now as they work themselves to Brooklands. Carter, I think, knows he's beat. That's a stellar pass.
Yeah, they've actually been quite well in their promotion to Pro-Am. Of course, winning last year's AM title, Carter has, and really proving that they're one of the more forefront drivers at the front of WSR. But Davidson just too strong. Now watches the 91 of Jack Osborne just get a little bit bigger out of that front windshield.
Yeah, and so when Alexander Davidson is starting to move through the Scotsman, I think there's a case of yellow helmet syndrome in play, like the legendary Ayrton Senna. Move out of my way. I am a locomotive, starting to find full flow. Jesse Payne-Wilkins now holding the next train behind. You can see those 4 of Marley Joffe, of Ross McFarlane, of Dennis Grabowski. They're all holding themselves together, and you want to try and follow in the toe of the car in front if you possibly can, but the key is going to be, where do you find the move? Marley Joffe looks to try and make that launch and comfortably dispatches of the pass, but will there be drive off the exit? That's a good run by Jesse Payne-Wilkins, but if he's in the wrong place, then Ross McFarlane, who had a half thought there to the inside, could have capitalised there, but decides against it, and now is going to have to work hard through the opening sector to make that move.
Well, we also saw that Grabowski, yeah, he's got patience, but still, when he wants to make a move, he's going to make that move, and will not be surprised if he gets tired of McFarlane sitting back behind Payne Wilkins for too long. Just decides going to make his own move to get up for position, try and take 2 in 1. As right now you see McFarlane going around the inside of Payne Wilkins. Meyer also going around Sikorsky, and yeah, Payne Wilkins going to lose another spot possibly, but no, Grabowski can't make the job done around the outside of loop.
He's trying what he can, and this is critical. Where do you find that pass? And Jesse Payne Wilkins will see Dennis Grabowski move to the inside behind that. Franek Sikorsky's in a bit of an issue here. William Guthrie's boxed in, and James Boomy wants action. There goes the move. Grabowski goes through. Boomy will get 1. We'll try and get 2 now. Around the outside, a hefty amount of cloud cover has just come across the circuit. There's no threat of rain that'll be coming through. It's just a passing cloud. But now for James Boomy, it's about drive here through Woodcote. Look at that crossover now for Cops Corner. Franek Sikorsky early out of the throttle, lets him have the corner.
Well, smart move, because you still got to defend behind as Boomy now into the top 10. Got to get around Meyer and then just set things off one by one. It's a matter of when will you pit, James, because you want to get back up to that lead. And we see Davidson now in second place, so it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be some sort of pit strategy between the 2 drivers in the lead of the pro category.
It was very much a cookie-cutter pass at Brooklands that got it done. Marley Joffe gets a good run off the exit. That's through on Aiden Carter, which will move Carter down the order then with that. Ross McFarlane trying to give chase, and so too Dennis Grabowski. Driver's eye view then from Aiden Carter. This is the perspective of what it's like to be a pro-am as Matthias Pirhanen becomes the first driver to jump in and make a pit stop. So that an interesting port of call to bring to order. But now for Aiden Carter, he knows how much he's got to try and stay with these drivers, and it's actually a really great learning experience, these race 2s, this round 6 of the championship, because you get the chance to directly learn about where these drivers are finding the pace.
Exactly, and we saw that Carter, battling up near the front. So you've got Joffe ahead of you, McFarlane and Grabowski behind you. So very fast drivers as, working their way through the race. And the fact that you've got your Pro-Ams and your Ams still in the top 10, it really speaks to the talent that we have in WSR.
It really does, and it shows how great the battles are being right now. Got a bit of side-by-side further back there with Crowther and Guthrie, as it's going to be Guthrie who wins off of the exit of the corner there, and so that full tilt car keeps its station against Harrison Crowther as they're battling just outside of the top 10 right now. But it is a wonderful amount of character, as now you can see there Ross McFarlane in the background going side-by-side and looking for the angle through against... Whoa! That's a bit of bravery there by Aiden Carter. Said, you're not getting any of that. But has that compromised the run out of Chapel? I think it has, and this is going to be the perfect pick then for Dennis Grabowski to try and make a way through. Thinks about it here as one goes by. Now it's going to pivot to the outside. Are they going to get the clearance on Carter? Yes. And McFarlane's going to find the hold. So well constructed, that one there. But Aiden Carter showing a lovely bit of bravado, even though it does cost him 2.
Grabowski's very fortunate that Lamborghini doesn't have a nose a millimeter longer, because that was a tight move to get back into line just to make the corner. Sikorsky now comes into the pits. He'll fall out of the top 10.
Yeah, so Franek Sikorsky will look for a bit of clean air to work with and a good, strong pit stop that will bring things back into perspective. Andy Archer and Tommy Vettel are your 2 retirees so far from, 3 retirees from this race, include Lee Berridge into the mix, and I think John Williams is running about but a lap down at this moment in time. So there are certainly scenarios out there where drivers are not finding what they want here at Silverstone, but it's a tougher circuit to retire at than others because there's miles and miles of runoff here because of the FIA Grade 1 status.
And that's exactly why these cars are so racy, because of the runoff. You can make a little bit of a bolder move than you can at some of the other tracks we have on the circuit, as Ava into the pits as well. But look at this battle for position. It's Michael Gray going to the inside of Chatterton, and he gets 20th position for the time being.
He does, so a comfortable pass there will certainly construct that one nicely. Chris Chatterton sees Michael Gray making good progress, and with Paddy Falconer just in front, this is really turning into the Pro-Ams fighting for what they can. It's really tough with these reverse grids. They sometimes break up categories, and I think it certainly has done with some at the front, like Jack Osborne and Aiden Carter and William Guthrie, for example, and then everyone else is basically fighting for scraps.
But you know what? Here's the thing. Like we said, it gives these drivers who are in these lower categories a chance to race with the higher categories and kind of either improve upon their talent or show their talent. So next season, if they decide to make the jump, they really can. Joffe really closing in on Osborne. Mercedes on Mercedes, but separate classes. Aiden Carter in pits.
Yep, so Aiden Carter departs from what was 5th position at the time, jumping down in and making that call. So this is going to be an important pit stop and giving yourself as much time as possible. The drive then for Jack Osborne is solid. Joffe angling for the inside of the atomic car, but the red and black is going to hold against the effect simulations machine that waits on just behind. McFarlane and Grabowski wait in the wing. So too does Myra and James Boomey, who right now is on a bit of damage limitation at this stage, because the way that Alexander Davidson's been going about it, he might take championship lead before penalty points get applied. Ben Bennyworth, Byron Crawford and Benjamin Gregory are all in the pits. It's nice to see Ben Gregory out there racing, but for the moment Marley Joffe trying to find an angle at the moment, and this is what the great drivers do. They sit, they wait, they watch, and they locate where the weakness is.
But how long do you sit with McFarlane, Grabowski, and Myra all behind you as they are closing in on position? You want to make the calculated move, but you don't want to make it too late, because you've got very fast drivers behind you who are waiting to pounce and get that position. Joffe taking a look heading into Baggett's, but thinks better of it.
It's tough, but Jack Osborne here looking for a good run here through Chapel Corner and stays very much middle of the road, and that gap there is about a half a car length at the moment. Jack Osborne being brought back in by Marley Joffe, going 254 on the brakes, sailing into the corner, using a bit more tyre to get it slowed up, and that will get it done. But Osborne attacks off the exit. Oh, that's smart there behind. That's Ross McFarlane deciding he's going to dive in for the pits.
Yeah, that is exactly what you want to do. Get yourself out of traffic, get the pit stop done early, and I think we're going to see some of the front runners here in the next 2 laps make their way into the pits as that moves Joffe into the podium position, with Osborne still trying to defend off of Grabowski, and Meyer actually fell back just a little bit, so only one car to have to worry about for that overall position, but Osborne has plenty of gap between he and Guthrie for the Pro-Am lead.
Yeah, so it's a case of one car goes through, but then another one's going to try and make the pass, and another one, and another one, and that's the one thing, you know, you've got to try and defend, but these drivers are so quick, it makes life really difficult to manage that one. Grabowski definitely not close enough. Pit stop done and dusted then, as out and away they go. Now, I am interested to see where they are coming out by comparison, because Frank Sikorsky has come out about 3 seconds behind Matthias Pirhanen, and Pirhanen, by the way, has just come out with Jesse Payne Wilkins and co. So Aiden Carter's out ahead. So I'd say Aiden Carter is the net leader of those who pitted. Ross McFarlane was about 6 seconds further back down the road than that. So well done by Ross. He's got a huge margin, but out of Copse and now running through towards Maggers, Beckett and Chapel. It's Dennis Grabowski's turn to try and figure out, how do I get past Jack?
And that's going to be the story of the day. Does Grabowski decide to pit this time by, which really is going to be smart. Of course, not so smart if Osborne decides, well, Osborne's going to move over and let Grabowski by. Now has to deal with Meyer for that fifth position here in just a little bit. But Grabowski makes easy work going down the hangar straight. And now we get to see who comes in this time with 17 minutes left. And I think Osborne's going to take the bait.
Yeah, and Anders Meyer is going to join him. He's going to try and pass him in the pits. They're side by side going down the lane, and it is as narrow as it gets. Anders Meyer very lucky to not get a black flag penalty, but there are penalties. Jack Osborne has got one. Adam Watson's got one for speeding.
You don't want to do that. Of course, it's very tough because you're at speed coming out of Stowe through Vale. And, of course, it's a very fast entry, and you really got to get down on the brakes for the pit entry. So we'll see how this penalty affects Osborne. And one problem was not self-inflicted throughout last race. This one, however, is.
Oh, it really is, and there through will go Ross McFarlane, who should get by all of them here. The car out of the pits, to keep in mind, is Anders Meyer, who is only just now coming up to speed, and Ross McFarlane is gone. Up the rise, gone. G-O-N-E, gone. Meyer's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, Myron has a ton of work to do. Of course, Osborne, who looked like the preeminent winner in Pro-Am, now watches his lead skate away. As Chatterton, your leader on the circuit, yet to pit. Would not be surprised to see Chatterton in the pits, but your aggregate leader right there, Aiden Carter, looking for their second win of the season.
Yeah, Chris Chatterton, by the way, in 7th position is leading Pro-Am. Michael Evdocker's lead coming down to 4.7 seconds. Alexander Davidson is hunting at the moment. There's the side-by-side as Adam Watson now looks for an elementary move, as this will be a cut up and under against Jesse Payne-Wilkins. Can't quite get there. John Williams, Harrison Crowther, William Guthrie, Eric Muxka, Pranik Sikorsky, and Alistair Kirk all in the group.
Tell you what, Payne-Wilkins holding on to their own over at Watson. We've seen how much better over this season, and we're only three tracks in. Payne-Wilkins has gotten in that 355 AM BMW, and here come your leaders.
Yeah, top 5 all into the pits. Evdocker, Davidson, Joffe, Grabowski, and James Boomy make your top 5. Joey Petrick will now hit the lane, and the question will be where the likes of Ross McFarlane will funnel out by comparison. That's the group battle we got. A bit of side-by-side on screen, as there goes a huge throw down to the inside from Adam Watson. He gets by Colin Sansom, who's in the middle of this, as lap traffic, but they are making great progress and going on by. On the exits then they will go, and it looks like Grabowski onto speed. Alex Davidson with a great launch. Marley Joffe looks like he's going to lose out, but here comes Ross onto pure pace at the moment, as we got lots of battles everywhere at the moment on screen. McFarlane holds it on the top. Look at what's going on in and around the top 20 here. Kirk and Sikorsky, Muxka and Guthrie going at it. Crowther, Watson, Payne-Wilkins, it's everywhere.
And, of course, look at coming out of the pits who your leader is. It's Evdocker. So Evdocker able to keep on that lead now, 3.5 seconds, 14 minutes of defense. But then again, look at who's in second. His teammate, Alex Davidson.
And he was closing in at around 0.6 of a second a lap there. So I am scared for Michael Evdocker's race win here. Alexander Davidson has a turn of pace that says, I reckon I can catch him. So he'll do everything he can. The 2 altitude frame cars then together, Crowther and Watson. Then as they sit behind Jesse Payne-Wilkins, and this group, which continues to bring itself into play, is all there. That's all for a top 10. Just a bit more in front of that, though. You got this going on right now. Grabowski, McFarlane, Joffe, and don't forget James Boomy on the back, who's looking for any sort of points to try and stave off the damage. This is a very critical moment of the race, and Ross wants his way through. Dennis Grabowski's got one job in my mind, even this early in the season. Fight like a dog and make sure James Boomy gets back to this group. McFarlane angling for that inside. They have to leave the room open.
They really do. And of course, that gives Joffe a chance to close in, headed towards Vale and into Club. Look at that battle for position. Oh, Grabowski, he's playing all sorts of defense to make sure Boomy can not only catch up, but be a bigger part in this battle, going down Sir Hamilton Straight for yet another lap. So this battle for fourth, it's a 3-car battle for now, but I'm feeling soon will be a 4-car battle.
It very much could do. Adam Watson now departs for the pit and drops down the order. So there's another pit stop that brings itself into play. McFarlane trying to open up Village. Now going to the middle of the road, trying to get a run on the exit. You can't get too far out of line through the arena section of the Silverstone circuit. It's known as the Arena Grand Prix layout out there because the arena they created through turns 2, 3, 4 and 5, and now in towards Brooklands Corner they come along. You can't step out of line because it just invites opportunity.
And drivers behind just waiting for all sorts of opportunity. But Grabowski, we've seen how tight he's been throughout this race, making moves where really have been low risk, but he's been able to capitalize on this. And now look at how close Boomy is to this battle for fourth place. He's on the back of that 909 of Joffe as they come around Cops, I should say, for once again at speed. But McFarlane trying to get in the mirrors of Grabowski. You're on board with the points leader in the pro category, James Boomy. He's been up 12 spots since the start, but can he improve upon this? He really wants to, because right now where he finishes would be his worst finish of the season.
Yeah, so he's only in 6th. He'd love a top 5 for one. He'd love to get a podium because it will mean parity restored with Alexander Davidson if he can manage that. And Alexander's trying to hunt Michael Evdoka down. The gap down to 3.2 seconds at the moment from 3.5 that last lap. So it's going to be a case of, is there even enough time to chase this down? Davidson's got to take, I'd say at this point, 6 to 8 tenths of a second a lap out of it if he wants something from it. Grabowski's holding well, and it's very much parity between these four. And keep an eye out, Pro-Am leader right now is Aiden Carter over William Guthrie, and Jesse Payne-Wilkins still leading Am, but can't afford to drop too many places because Franek Sikorsky is not a million miles away.
No, and Sikorsky is battling with Alistair Kirk and Mushka for position. Of course, Guthrie holding up that train right through there. Oh, nice little inside move by Mushka for 12th spot around Payne-Wilkins. So now only Alistair Kirk separates Payne-Wilkins from Sikorsky for the time being.
And it's worth noting Jack Osborne out of the race, so it's gone horribly wrong for him in Pro-Am today. Eric Muxka gets to the inside, and will it be a follow-through job for Alistair Kirk? Answer's no. What a block there by Muxka as they go through. Kirk takes a huge wide line, trying to open up the exit here of Luffield, almost a karting line with a diamonded exit there, but Alistair Kirk's not going to get the run needed. Jesse's going to try and fight back. It's defended here over to Cops.
Oh, and Sikorsky also saying, hey, I want to play with you guys. But, of course, Kirk, Wilkins, and Muska all taking their pram and going home for the time being with under 10 minutes left. Was this such a great battle here for position. Of course, Kirk trying to get around Payne-Wilkins for that 13th spot, but this is not for a battle in the glass.
Well, this is where you've got to be so switched on, and drivers are looking around saying, can I go and make what's needed? There is a little concern with Dennis Grabowski on his fuel numbers and how tight drivers are trying to be to get themselves over the line. It may be a case of watch the clock by the time the end of this race comes around. 2.8 now, the gap at the front. It's enough for Michael Evdoka at the moment, but now it's about Jesse here, as Alistair Kirk is the only solace between himself and Franek Sikorsky.
You know, you're talking about the gap that Davidson needs to close in. He's only 0.4 of a second per lap slow right now. I don't think it's going to be enough as we're watching out of the nose of this battle. Alistair Kirk trying to do all that he can to get around Payne-Wilkins for 13th and get up to Eric Mushka to battle for a podium spot in Pro-Am. So there's a lot to play for here in this battle for 13th and 12th.
Yeah, and every point counts between now and the end of the season. You got to remember, it's a long road to Daytona Beach, and every single circuit's going to be there. That's a big, wide line by Adam Tompkins there, who will find himself off the road going through with a spin all on his own, right in front of Dan McCauley. Just too aggressive trying to get the power down.
He really can't do that. Coming out of that corner, it looks wider on the exit than it really does, as Michael Gray knocking at the door for that 20th position over Adam Tompkins. It's Mustang ahead of Mercedes-Benz, and here's the replay of that, and just gets on the gas a little too early. And yeah, that back end, wanted to see what that front end was looking at.
There's a lot of in-car tools that can give you a lot of chance as they scrap still, does Tompkins here, as Gray looks to give his best showing of it. There's a lot of in-car tools like the traction control, for example, that gives you a little bit of pliability, but you don't want huge amounts of traction control off, because any traction control does make the car a little bit slower.
It really does, because the X is kind of a rev limiter there, and you don't want to have that rev limiter, especially if you're coming onto, the long straight like a Wellington straight. But I've got to say this, look at how close Michael Gray is, and Tompkins taking a defensive line headed towards Stowe. Gray's going to pop to the outside. Does he have enough? He's close on the quarter pad. A little bit of a rub as both cars go off.
Yeah, that was deep there, and I think that was half a wiggle through the middle of the corner by Adam Tompkins. He was lucky to still have a car, but Tompkins, I think, is down into the pits then, because he's got a black flag for incident points, and he's going to have to try and serve that. You get a drive-through penalty every 18 incidents you pick up. He hits the limit, and now has to go serving that penalty. James Boomey stuck and about a second back of Marley Joffe, behind Ross McFarlane. Dennis Grabowski can't do anything but keep the pace up.
And that's exactly what he needs to do, is try and slow the pace down so Boomey can catch up. I wonder if he's hearing from the team that Boomey a little bit further back than he really needs to be to get himself into that top 5 position, even into the podium, as McFarlane is trying to make any sort of move to make his equally wide Mustang get around Grabowski so he can get on the bottom step of the podium.
Well, if you can get to the bottom step of the podium, you can have a really good chance of scoring great points later on in the season. We talk about moments, we talk about margins, and even though it's the 6th place now, it will come back to bite later on in this championship. Mark your words about it. But Dennis Grabowski's doing everything necessary. Ross McFarlane close. Marley Joffe also trying to think about where there's a little bit of a something to be had, and the lead gap now will creep under 2 seconds now for the first time. With 5 minutes to go, at 10 minutes, it was 3 seconds. So it looks like there still might be a half a sniff for Alexander Davidson, but for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, right now, status quo resumes. Dennis Grabowski, though, will be looking behind the nose mirrors for when, not if, Ross McFarlane decides to start thinking about pouncing.
You got to say this, though, Ivdaka doing a great job of staying up front and trying to keep that lead, trying to become the 3rd different winner this season overall and in Pro. Oh, look at how close McFarlane gets to Grabowski heading into the loop coming out of the village as Joffe and now Boomey finally closes in. So does Boomey make a move on Joffe here coming down the Wellington straight into Brooklands? He's a little bit too far away so far, but he's still set there, and look at who's back there in case one of these 4 cars mess up. It's Anders Meyer in the 20.
Yeah, but there's a couple seconds between them, so it would have to be a seismic incident that changes their output out there at this moment in time. This has been all about finding one small, minute crack and just exploiting it for what it's worth. That's what Ross McFarlane wants, a way to get through Dennis Grabowski. Marley Joffe wants to see carnage in front. So too does James Boomey and Anders Meyer as well. 1.3 now the gap at the front. 1.1 now the gap at the front. Michael Ivdaka is in a world of hurt. He'll have 2 laps. I think Davidson could catch him by the last lap of the race.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as the sands in the hourglass fall between Evdoka and Davidson, as Davidson trying to close up so he can get his third win. Oh, look, the inside by Joffe on McFarland. Thinks better of it going through Stowe. That's a place where you can make a move there, Jake, but at the same time, you don't want to make something if you're not too sure of making the move.
No, you've got to make sure that you've got yourself in play with the move. Anything over 50%, you've got to feel comfy with. But you do have to sometimes think about the 40%, the 30%, the 20% move late on as far as the season goes. A look behind then, the view of Dennis Grabowski, and then to Ross McFarlane. And McFarlane happily holding himself in his station, doing what is necessary, doing only what is needed to at the moment. But for the moment, Grabowski here is having to play a little bit of a defensive track through a couple of these corners. He's not using all the road.
So many great battles that we're watching as well. Aiden Carter trying to hold off Harrison Crowther and William Guthrie. Now, why is that important? Guthrie is second in the Pro-Am class right now, about a half second behind Carter. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But we're still watching this battle for third place between Grabowski, McFarlane, Joffe, and Boomy. Joffe has made moves saying, hey, I might want to make a move, but I've got to say this, McFarlane has been all over the back of Grabowski like a cheap suit the past couple of laps, as Boomy may be hand-tied here to make something happen, as we'll go to the one to go signal this time by.
We will do, but we're not quite there yet. Question being, of these four drivers right now fighting for third, who would you want to be, Jeremy?
I would want to be probably McFarlane, because, look, he's the one who's been able to make the most hay. We know that once McFarlane will get out in front of this battle, he's going to walk away from Joffe, because Joffe's been holding back Boomy as well. And I think it's going to be, a question of what if here out of our points leader.
Left side searching goes one Mr. Ross McFarlane, trying to open up Dennis Grabowski for that last spot on the podium. 3/4 of a second the gap at the front of the field. No looks then into the Vale. This one's going to go to the last lap then for all of this, for the race win, for the podium, for the top 10. It's all on at this moment in time. We don't have enough cameras to show it all. Michael Evdoka has taken the last lap, but Alexander Davidson is still there at 0.6 of a second, and there's two lots of traffic in front. Byron Crawford and Nathan Healy. Crawford gets out of the way. Healy doesn't, but for the moment it's defended by Grabowski. Here for third place, McFarlane is there, bottom of your screen. The race for the win, which is going on at the moment. And for third, it's looking like it's heating up, and still McFarlane can't quite get there. Marley Joffe's trying to angle things up. Evdoka holds it off, but now the gap's down to 0.3 of a second. There could be a look on the hangar straight. That's what Alexander Davidson's been banking on, a 7-second gap that has been reeled in the last half an hour's worth of driving. But now for Grabowski, he's still just about holding himself on the top of screen in third, and Ross McFarlane trying to get 1, 2, 3 for WSR Esports here in round 6 of the championship. This is stellar as they now move into Copse Corner then on the top. On the bottom, they are going to be nose to tail soon, and Alexander Davidson is only going to have a couple shots if he wants to get this done. Evdoka, who has led every single lap of this race, who has done everything right by his measure of metric, now knows that Alexander Davidson has got an angle of attack, and it's going to come at Stowe Corner. Here comes the chances for both groups along this straight. It's not there yet for Alexander Davidson. He'll have to lunge at the Vale. Are there any looks behind that? Grabowski holds off for the moment, but is there a lunge? Defended by Evdoka. Alexander Davidson trying to throw a huge up and under lane. Evdoka, does he extend too far? It's going to be close as they go to the Vale. Evdoka, Eternal, will hold and win. Will stave off Davidson. For third we go back. Grabowski owning. McFarlane gets turned by Joffe. My goodness.
What a fantastic finish for that top 5. By the way, we also missed Aiden Carter falling back, your Pro-Am winner. Looks like it's going to be William Guthrie. There's a spin at the back. Guthrie 3 spins. Muska's going to win in Pro-Am after a last lap, last quarter spin. That's also going to give Frank Sikorsky a win in the AM category as he's leading Dan McCauley by about 3 seconds.
Well, Guthrie tried to shut the door and ultimately ran out of time to do so. That's why the spin occurred, and you can't blame Muxka for that attempt then. This is Aiden Carter, so he takes the spin and the tap there from Crowther. That opens up the door. There was a secondary spin in there as well. I think that would have been the likes of Jesse there, who found himself around Jesse Payne-Wilkins. But ultimately, a case of where do you look on that final lap. There's William Guthrie's perspective of things as he thinks, oh, it's going to be all over for me. There's not much I can do about it. He turns around and looks and thinks, right, can I hold an angle? Goes to the inside. He's a little blocked in by the 2 altitude frame cars. Door gets opened up. Muxka chives for the inside, and I don't think he does anything wrong. He's fighting for the win.
No, and I think Muska holds his line. It looks like, if anything, Guthrie kind of turned in just a little bit. Not sure if he didn't know that Muska was there or not. As we take a look at the Ross McFarland spin, and I don't know about that one.
It's tough. Marley Joffe was there, was definitely trying to say on that final lap, this is what I can do. He was working for a way on Dennis Grabowski. The difference is, how far along does he get? He just about gets to the A pillar, and that is what you call the grey zone.
Yeah, that's just, man, we took the dramas of lap 1 and moved them into the last lap of this race, but a lot of mayhem there, calamity in that final corner, especially the final couple of corners.
So much that goes on through, but Michael Evdoka holds against Alexander Davidson and wins from pole in race 6. It will be Dennis Grabowski who will take the last spot on the podium, and because Marley Joffe was trying to give that place back to Ross McFarlane, James Boomey will come across the line in 4th. Marley Joffe will fall to 5th. Anders Myra will finish 6th as Ross McFarlane will end up 7th after all of that. Harrison Crowther will be in 8th with Matthias Pirhanen in 9th, and Eric Muxka will take your Pro-Am category in 10th ahead of Alistair Kirk in 11th. Franek Sikorsky will take Am in 12th, just ahead of Daniel McCauley by about 3 seconds, as Aiden Carter and Jonathan Walker are 14th and 15th. Phil Samways is 16th ahead of Jesse Payne-Wilkins, who spun on the final lap. Michael Gray makes it 3 Full Tilt Motorsport cars in a row, with Tom Griggs and Adam Watson rounding out your top 20. Arthur Thurtle and Patrick Falconer will be in 21st and 22nd, ahead of Chris Chatterton and Ben Altria, who's had a long day of trying to recover points, but that's a good job there, ahead of Håkan Ida Lindmo and William Guthrie, down to 26th over the line. Brian Loynes will be in 27th, with Adam Tompkins and Joey Petrig showing that they had pace but ultimately fell away to 28th and 29th. Tom Griffiths will round out your top 30. Benjamin Gregory and Richard Simnor are 31st and 32nd, ahead of Ben Bennyworth and Jacques Eva. John Roberts is 35th, ahead of Drew Fletcher. Despite the early dramas for Paul Smith, he still gets 37th, ahead of Elliot Roberts, and the 1 lap down Nathan Healy in 39th. Byron Crawford would also be, for 11/10ths racing, down by a lap. Howard Hassan, John Williams and Colin Sansom would also be 1 lap down. Your retirees, including Joe Coffin, Jack Osborne, Lee Berridge, Tommy Vedel and Andy Archer, making up the field. Jeremy, that is, as simply put, a crazy end to what is a incredible race that we have had there in race number 6. And if that is anything to go by, this season is going to be on absolute tenterhooks.
You know, we've had banger after banger these past couple of races, and I've got to say this: I'm sitting here in the chat watching the drivers, and you'd think that they served a bit of spice with the fish and chips here at Silverstone, because there's a lot of difference in opinion, but this battle for the lead. Holy cow, Michael Evdoka, have a day. What a fantastic end to this race.
What a wonderful run that they have had, but it's also worth noting in mind that they've still got to go at it again for the next round of the championship. It is a long old slog, and Jeremy, when you come out of a race like this and you've just been so close to victory on 2 occasions. You know, this has been a great points day for Alexander Davidson, but does he take a huge amount of momentum knowing he hasn't had a win?
Well, here's the thing too. He does, if you're looking at the team championship, because now you have WSR Esports. It doesn't matter where they finish; they're always on the podium because you've got Boomy's trying to bring Altitude Freem up to the top. But when you've got so many fast drivers in WSR, Jake, I've got to say this: the team championship, it's not as much up for grabs as the pro championship is right now.
No, it certainly isn't, but there's still so much to try and work out in terms of the battling. In terms of where we are next, it will be a little wait for it. 2 weeks for the Autodromo Internacional do Algarve as we will head to Portimao in Portugal, right on the south coast of the Iberian Peninsula for that battle. 7 p.m. GMT is the time and the place for that, and you do not want to miss it one bit in terms of racing action. This was a day of so many great stories that come into it. Alexander Davidson with 2 great results. James Boomy going back to the point and saying he can keep on winning week after week after week. But it's all about a hold, a great hold. Michael Evdoka picking up the win in race 6, and we'll see more great action with your World GT Championship here with us on iRacing with RaceSpotTV in just 2 weeks' time.